How could a slow dive bomber, outmatched in speed, maneuverability, and firepower, shoot down 3 Japanese Zeros and then help sink the carrier they came from? It sounds impossible, but on April 7, 1942, in the vast blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a U.S. Navy pilot flying one of the slowest aircraft in the American arsenal, the Douglas SBD-3 Dauntless, would achieve what many historians still consider one of the most extraordinary single-flight performances of the entire war. The location was north of the Coral Sea, 300 miles from the nearest friendly ship. The unit, Scouting Squadron VS-5, operating from the carrier USS Yorktown, CV-5. The weather: clear skies, scattered clouds, calm winds. Perfect conditions for Japanese air superiority, terrible conditions for anyone trying to survive it. Little did the men aboard Yorktown know, what happened that day would become legendary. To understand this incredible moment, we need the strategic backdrop. It was early 1942. The Japanese Navy was sweeping across the Pacific, unstoppable, aggressive, and confident. At the tip of their spear were the A6M2 Mitsubishi Zeros, flown by some of the most experienced pilots on Earth. No American aircraft could match their climb rate, turn radius, or acceleration. And yet, the U.S. Navy relied heavily on the SBD Dauntless, a dive bomber designed not for speed, but for precision strikes on ships. Top speed, 255 miles per hour. The Zero, 331 miles per hour. On paper, the Dauntless shouldn't stand a chance. But one pilot, Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vejtasa, stood out among his squadron. Regarded as calm under pressure, a master of energy management, and fiercely protective of his wingmen, Vejtasa had already earned respect long before April 7th. On that day, Yorktown launched a maritime search operation to locate the Japanese task force believed to be maneuvering toward the Coral Sea. If they found the carriers first, the Americans could strike. If not, the consequences could be devastating. Vejtasa escorted the search formation. He knew what was out there. He knew the odds. Still, he climbed into his Dauntless, call sign 5S7, checked his rear gunner, ARM-3C John Rodkey, and launched into the morning sky. What awaited them was a storm of steel. At 180 miles from Yorktown, the first warning crackled through the radio. Bogies inbound, fast movers, multiple aircraft. Through the Dauntless's canopy, black dots shimmered in the distance. Then, the sun caught their wings. 9 Mitsubishi A6M2 Zeros, approaching at high speed. The Dauntless was not meant for dogfighting. Its dive brakes, large wings, heavy frame, and bomb load made it sluggish and slow to roll. Yet, turning back wasn't an option. The search group needed to survive. Yorktown needed their reconnaissance. The first 3 Zeros dove in line, cannons blazing. Tracers tore past the canopy, sizzling like angry hornets. Vejtasa shoved the Dauntless into a tight descending spiral, an impossible maneuver for most bombers, but the Dauntless was built strong. Its strengthened wings could handle high G turns without tearing apart. At 200 yards, a Zero overshot its approach. Vejtasa saw his chance. He pulled the nose up, squeezed the trigger on his 2 nose-mounted 50 caliber Brownings, and stitched a line of fire across the Zero's fuselage. The fighter burst into flame and plunged into the sea. Kill number 1. More Zeros swarmed. Rodkey swung his twin 30 caliber guns and opened fire. At 12,000 feet, 2 Zeros attacked from opposite angles. Vejtasa threw the Dauntless into a vertical climb, bleeding speed to gain altitude. It was a crazy move, and the Zeros followed. At the top of the climb, with the Dauntless nearly stalling, Vejtasa kicked the rudder hard. The bomber snapped over the top in a hammerhead turn, one of the only vertical maneuvers where the SBD could momentarily gain an advantage. A Zero flashed in front of him. He fired. The Japanese fighter disintegrated in midair. Kill number 2. Still, the sky swarmed with enemy aircraft. By 1408, Vejtasa was down to just a few hundred rounds, fuel dropping. Search formations scattered. Another Zero approached from the left rear quarter. Rodkey fired and missed. The Zero closed in, cannon shells slamming into the Dauntless's tail. The aircraft buckled. Warning lights flashed. Vejtasa rolled hard, diving to just 2,000 feet above the ocean. Spray from the waves speckled his canopy. The Zero made its final mistake, coming in predictably on the bomber's tail. Vejtasa chopped power, popped the dive flaps for drag, and forced the Zero to overshoot. It shot past him like a bullet. He lined up his shot, less than 70 yards. A burst of 50 caliber fire ripped through the engine. The Zero nosed over and vanished into the sea. Kill number 3. The sky finally went quiet, but the danger wasn't over. His ammunition was nearly gone. His aircraft was heavily damaged, and worst of all, his radio antenna had been shot away. He had no communication, no bearings, fuel was low, compass malfunctioning. They were flying blind in one of the largest oceans on Earth. Rodkey whispered, "Sir, we're not going to make it back, are we?" Vejtasa didn't answer. The Pacific stretched endlessly. If they missed Yorktown by even 20 miles, they would crash into the sea. Then, through a break in the clouds, Vejtasa saw smoke rising on the horizon. Lots of smoke. From warships, Japanese ones. He was directly over the enemy carrier group. Most pilots would turn away. Most would run. But Vejtasa saw a wounded carrier, later identified as the Ryujo, moving at reduced speed, decks scorched from earlier attacks. He made a decision that defied all logic. With almost no ammunition, in a damaged aircraft, low on fuel, he began a dive bomb run. Alarms blared. Rodkey shouted, "Lieutenant, what are you doing?" Vejtasa stayed silent as the Dauntless screamed downward. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. At 1,000 feet, he released his 500-pound bomb. Seconds later, it slammed into Ryujo's forward elevator. A massive explosion tore through the carrier. Vejtasa pulled up so hard he nearly blacked out. He had done it. With a crippled plane and almost no ammo, he struck a Japanese carrier at point blank. With smoke behind him, he turned south, guessing his way back toward Yorktown as fuel dropped dangerously low. Minutes passed. Then, like a miracle, shapes appeared on the horizon. American ships. He had found them. At 15:39 hours, Vejtasa crash-landed on Yorktown. The aircraft was so damaged it was pushed overboard afterwards, but Vejtasa and Rodkey survived. His report stunned the carrier group. 3 Zeros shot down, survival against impossible odds, a successful strike on a Japanese carrier, all in one mission. Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vejtasa received the Navy Cross. Later, he transferred to fighters, becoming an ace of aces. Historians still ask, how could a slow dive bomber outfly the best fighters in the Pacific? The answer: skill, courage, and an iron will to survive. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WWII Records as we continue bringing these forgotten chapters of history back to life.